and you have it so backwards. Okay.
Right, well, to start with, for one, did you even understand this, child? Hello, everybody, and good evening. Welcome to Benny's Big Talk. I'm here with my friend, Krissy.
Hi.
Thanks for coming on the show, Krissy.
I'm a little nervous about it.
That's okay. That's what we got these for, man. Cheers. Yeah. If you make that face, that means it's good. It's a little strong, but hey, we need that. Listen, I get a little nervous too, man. But it's okay, you know. You're amongst friends, and I know you ain't got no problem with talking, girls, so don't worry about it. Just because, forget, the camera don't exist. Remember that.
I'm going to try.
All right. So, Krissy, I've known you for almost 8 years, I think.
Has it only been 8?
Does it feel like a longer?
Yeah, it feels like it's been like 20.
Yeah. Well, you know, people often say when they're spending time with me, it takes forever, and it feels like it lasts, you know, for an eternity. So it makes sense, you know. But
You and Meg have only been together for 8?
8 years, man. Yeah.
Well, then we've known you for 8.
Yeah. So I've gotten to know you over that time, and I know that you're incredibly passionate about the things you believe in. You know, and you really you don't just talk. You know, you really put your time and money and effort where your mouth is. You know, and you help a lot of people. And yeah, I like you, Krissy. You know, so I'm glad to have you come on the show and talk about some things. And as I understand it, you had some topics you wanted to cover.
I do.
All right. Let's bring them out. Let's do it.
I think the first one that I kind of wanted to touch base, and I'll need you to like help facilitate it, but I just really wanted to like touch base on the homelessness epidemic going on in the world right now. Because I feel like it's really easy for everyone to kind of like close their eyes and not really think about the people who are living in the woods behind your house, or people who are just sleeping on the road, or who aren't sleeping because they're terrified of what's going to happen to them if they fall asleep.
It's an ugly, uncomfortable thing that a lot of people just don't want to face. They'd rather just look away from it. But it's something that's pervasive in our society, and a lot of unfortunate people are just beset upon by the conditions they're put in. You know, there's a lot of reasons why people are homeless, as we know this. It's a complex issue, and it's not something we can just erase overnight. And that's what I really want to get down to it at is really realistic solutions, you know, that we can enact. Because, you know, you can say like, okay, let's build homes. And that has been tried, and in some cases been successful, some cases it hasn't. But in a lot of ways, it's a more complex issue than just giving people housing. I mean, there's more involved in transitioning these people into a better life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you also have personal experience. I know that you've worked at like a soup kitchen. You've helped with homeless people before, so you've actually been involved in this issue directly, and you've had some personal experiences with it. So what have your personal experiences kind of led you to think about this?
So I've worked in tons of like homeless shelters and just like soup kitchens and stuff like that. But also like I worked at Metropolitan Ministries, which is like one of the biggest organizations here in Tampa and like Pasco County, that really works toward not necessarily helping homelessness, but they take in people who need help, and they really try to give them a sense of dignity and identity, and help them to get to the place where if you put them out into the wild, they're not going to be homeless again. Or that's the hope, at least.
Yeah. So they offer kind of not just a blanket like, okay, we'll give you food, we'll give you housing, but they actually try and offer them a transitionary thing to try and change their state of mind, to maybe give them help they need in terms of maybe support for their mental health, support with addiction, things like that.
Absolutely. So Metropolitan specifically, they help them get an ID because you can't really apply for jobs without an ID.
Yeah.
So they help them with that. They provide them with like clothes to like go to interviews with, even makeup, stuff like that you don't think of. But they also provide therapy, which is like something people don't really take in consideration. But a lot of homelessness is caused by mental health situations. And so if you're just kind of like here's a house or here's money or here's food. Like, yeah, like you're helping in the moment, but you're not really helping
Yeah,
them.
it's almost like just like a band-aid for a much bigger issue.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, I think the unfortunate thing about it is that, especially there's been a lot of programs in California that have tried to kind of give housing for the homeless, things like that, but they haven't been incredibly successful, and they're also very expensive. It seems like there's a lot of corruption in these plans. It seems like a lot of cases governments actually kind of benefits from a continued homeless population, because a lot of people are working and are employed in the industry of of dealing with this problem, but they wouldn't really profit off the problem going away. So in some ways I feel like they're kind of perpetuating it. But like, what do you feel like are actual concrete, real things that can help people transition to a better life, than being out on the street?
Well, I feel like instead of just providing people with homes, housing is great in the long end, but a real concrete solution is seeing what individuals need. So,
Mm-hmm.
like, whether it's medical help because they can't afford to go to the doctor, but in order to be whole, in order to like be strong enough to go get a job and make money for themselves, they need the medical help first. And obviously, I'm a firm believer in therapy. We'll get there later in the podcast, but it's a huge component to helping these people because not like they probably already had some mental illnesses
Yeah.
that help cause them to become homeless,
Yeah.
but also being homeless takes a huge toll on you. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't speak personally, but I have encountered hundreds and hundreds of homeless people, and just really sitting down and talking to them, it's so much more than like I can't pay rent, which who can these days?
Yeah, right.
Like it's so expensive. So getting them like mental and physical health is a huge solution to be able to kind of curb homelessness. But as far as solving homeless is a bigger systematic problem where there's too many people who make most of the money in the world, and if that money were just like spread more evenly beyond the 1%, it would be so much less of an issue. But there's a hoarding money issue in America, in everywhere, but in America, but also hoarding resources. Like there is enough food grown in the world to feed everyone and then some. But we're holding everything back because of money, because of status, because of tariffs. Like I don't want to get into that, but like there's enough if we were just willing to feed everyone as like a principle to living. Like eating should be eating is a human right.
Yeah.
But
Well, I think okay. So the issue is an implementation, because I mean I think as I get older I find that the constant seeking of profit should not always come in the face of human dignity, right? And there is a base value of human dignity that we in a modern society should be able to give to all of our citizens, but we don't. We're not interested in it. But if we talk about redistributing wealth, then the only institution that can really do that is the state. And is the state going to use that money efficiently if all of a sudden if we start taxing billionaires to a quite higher extent, which I don't have any issue with that in theory, but is that money all of a sudden going to go to the right causes when currently there's tons and tons of tax revenue and it does not go to the right cause? It does not go to the homeless, does not go to education, doesn't go to infrastructure. So much of it is wasted, and there's massive out of scale corruption. And so it's one thing to say if we could end this with a certain amount of money, but it's another thing to say we really have the ability to do this within a very, very corrupt money influence system that we exist in.
Yeah.
And so we want to solve the problem, but can we? And also, there is always going to be some level of inequity. There's always going to be rich and poor, regardless of what the disparity is. The disparity is insane right now, absolutely. But there will always be people who have nothing, and we can't really eliminate that problem. It's just not how any distribution of systems work, but we can at least try and allow for human dignity with the systems we have. And we're trying to lift all of us up. There should be a value as being a citizen of the United States, and you should have some benefits of that. And your government should be there to lift you up off the floor if you have nothing else,
Yeah, I think that all of the issues, all the solution, like you said, the distribution of wealth and it not going to what it should is all like we can do as much as we can, but unfortunately it's a big government corruption, just like the money's not going where it should be. The money is going in people's pockets, the money's going toward the military, the money's going toward building more places that they're charging $3,000 for a one bedroom.
Luxury apartments.
It's just making it harder for people to get on their feet. And I think that a big way to help homelessness, but it's on a smaller scale, I do admit, is that the world needs a reality check and empathy and compassion, because one of the big things Zach taught me this term recently, it's called NIMBY, or not in my backyard. And I want to go into that a little more, but there's such a lack of compassion when it comes to homelessness or just poor people.
Because we have a fundamental difference in how we view compassion in the United States. Our compassion is kind of like you give someone a self-help kind of speech, and you say lift yourself up, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, etc. You say it's all individualistic. It's like you have the power, you can live the American dream if you just go get a job, kind of thing, right? But meanwhile, there's absolutely no connection to the actual steps to make that happen, and they don't actually care in that extent. It's
because it's not like, okay, go get a job, for example. Okay, well, what clothes do I wear? Because they're not going to choose me over a candidate if I'm wearing ratty clothes, or who's going to pay for me to have a haircut, stuff like that unfortunately, jobs are based on appearance a lot of times, whether they want to be or not. You're going to be not chosen over someone who's more physically appropriate for it. And so, go get a job, but I need new clothes. I need a haircut. I need a ride to the interview. I need a transportation. And there's not public transportation as accessible as it should be. And that's a huge issue, and kind of making homelessness more of an issue.
Oh, yeah. The zoning is a huge part of it, and the way our municipal governments attack, the distribution of public spaces. We live in kind of like this mixture of a city and the country. So we have to, it takes us 20 minutes to get anywhere. There's these huge parking lots, these huge spaces that separate all things. And the public transit is just not efficient enough to get you anywhere in any reasonable amount of time. People having to take the bus to things. It takes forever. Yeah. You have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning. If you're trying to go to work, take the bus. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of time. And it is just not efficient because we're so centric on the car, and that gives you this barrier to entry for the economy. Whereas if you can't afford a car, you have this innate disadvantage that is extremely difficult to overcome just to participate in our society.
Because and it's not beyond the cost or how long it takes. It's like almost math in order to take public transportation. Like if we wanted to go from Pasco to Pinellas, which is typically about a 45-minute drive, you're looking at 4 or 5 different buses that you have to schedule exactly on time, and sometimes run to one stop. And there's so much to it that it is genuinely difficult to use the public transportation system if you're trying to use it for a scheduled thing.
Because it's an afterthought. Because the automobile industry is so powerful, such a powerful lobbying. You don't have a country that is designed for public transit. And this comes back to the code that was established in the earlier parts of the country. Things like Euclidean zoning, which is where basically they completely separate entire different areas based on use. So it's like you can only have commercial stuff here. You can only have residential stuff over here, which means that you can't have like a corner store. You can't start a business in your garage unless you go through this extremely difficult set of paperwork, and that probably isn't going to happen anyways. So if you want anything, you have to go extremely long distances, and it separates people from each other and from work and from every function of being a person. And so you just have this life that unless you live the life of I have a house in the suburbs and I work in the city, and I commute here like, 2 hours a day, in my car. If you can't do that, then you can't participate in American society.
Yeah.
And so where are you going to go? What are you going to do? You can't afford that. You're going to end up on the street.
And they're making it where so we live in Pasco County, but there's nothing as far as good, genuine jobs in Pasco County.
Because it's a commuter area.
Exactly.
Right?
So, but in order to live in Pinellas County, where all the jobs are, all the places that you'd want to frequent, you have to be able to drive there, and you can't live there.
Yeah.
It's freaking crazy amount for nothing. You're getting you don't even get a full fridge.
Well, it's like you could live there, but then you're spending such a high percentage of your income on rent, but that's exactly how it's intended. Because the higher percentage of your money you spend on rents and the basic necessities of life, the less likely you are to increase your level in the socioeconomic hierarchy.
Yeah, because you
never
can't
get
save.
out of this place. You can't save anything. By the end of the month, your money's all out, and it's time to go back and get that paycheck again, which is fine. But it keeps you, it sustains you at a certain level and makes sure you cannot better yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of the American dream is just it's subsistence at a certain level, and you feel like you're getting some kind of success, but you're really in kind of a limbo forever because you aren't allowed to have the tools you need to better yourself. And you can, I watch Dave Ramsey and people like that, and they do. There's nothing technically wrong about what they say, which is that if you spend no money ever, you never see the inside of a restaurant unless you're working there, which is what he says. If you save literally everything you make, and if you eat off of rice and beans for years, then yes, you can save money. But that is a horrible existence, man.
Yeah, why would you want, if I'm going to be able to afford to live, I'd much rather have a smaller house with less material items, but be able to go to Texas Roadhouse when I wanted to.
It's you need to be able to enjoy life now. The point of Dave Ramsey's thing is that, okay, you live, I think his phrase is live like no one else so that you can live like no one else in the future, right? And the theory is that you just starve and do subsistence and you just do nothing so that when you're retired, you can have a good life, But it's that's the whole problem with the American idea is that we work for our best years of our life. We work for the 30, 40-year best years of our lives. And then once we're old and broken, then we're allowed to have a little time off.
Hopefully.
Yeah, ideally, and assuming the Social Security lasts, et cetera, ends your 401k. But, all the good years of your life, when you have energy and money, you can't do anything. All you have to do is work, and maybe you get a week or two off a year to do a tiny vacation, but you probably need to use some of that PTO time if you get sick, et cetera.
For medical, yeah.
And so you have to make this choice of am I going to be sick or am I going to go on vacation? And so that's the American life, man. And that's what I find so just awful about it because because profit, it always comes before human dignity and the value of human life. And it's a very ugly thing as you get older and you see it and you see people buy into it wholesale and they feed into this whole grinding life. Well, it's okay, I worked 120 hours this week. Well, congratulations, but Jesus. Yeah. What life is that?
Yeah. My mom's going to watch this, but my mom has always been this really hard worker. Ever since I can remember as a child, she worked 14, 15-hour work days. Sometimes she even had a second job at night after working. And, we were lower class. We didn't have a lot of money, but I never wanted for anything.
Yeah.
My mom always, we were in sports and we always had food. We always had shelter. And my mom would literally break her back in order to provide that for us.
Yeah, there's a value to hard work, but people take it to this ideological level where they make TikTok videos of them waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they do 3 jobs and they're like, that's because I'm grinding, bro, because I'm trying to make it. But it's like, you aren't gonna make it, man.
Yeah, and now my mom, she looks great and she still seems very young and she like keeps up with all the grandchildren, but you can see that she's feeling how much she's worked. Even now, she's, I think, turning 56 this year, and she is still working 14, 15-hour days sometimes. And it doesn't seem like people even appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, what are you doing it for? Because you're not even, like, making millions of dollars. But even if you were, like, when do you have time or energy to be able to enjoy it?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point in that? Like, I feel like I just turned 30, but I feel like if I'm not able to enjoy life outside of work or even at work, I don't want to work a job that I'm not happy at.
Yeah.
If I'm not able to do that, what is the point in being here? So,
I think that I don't like people who say that, like, okay, like if I had money, I would just not work. I would just sit around. I think that there is a value to putting effort in life into doing good works, but when I say work, like I tell people, I say, like, I want to be working when I'm like 70, 75. I say that and people think I'm crazy, but like, I don't mean like going to a 9 to 5 and just, or like, bagging groceries or something. I mean, like, if I find something that I feel passionate about and I can do good things, work, I don't feel like just stopping that has any real value. Like, the purpose of life is to struggle to do good things and better yourself and better everyone around you, through your labors, and that's where you really find meaning, is through doing good things, and if you just want to do nothing, I just don't really see the value in that, but if you're toiling for something that doesn't give you any meaning, doesn't give you any value, is just sucking the soul out of you, and you're not even profiting off it that much, then you're just glorifying what is really a kind of slavery. It's a kind of servitude. And that's you're trying to find meaning in a terrible situation. And that's good, but it's just a natural instinct for us to try and rationalize what is really a terrible situation, and life could be better, And
unfortunately, that seems like the reality of most lower to middle class Americans, is that they're working jobs that they don't necessarily enjoy or are even soul sucking just to get a paycheck that is just enough to cover bills and then maybe some food. But like, they're not enjoying things. And to round it a little bit, like, if lower middle class Americans who are working 9 to 5, sometimes even more, sometimes like even my mom that are working like these salary positions, like, how are they not getting to live life and not enjoying life? But then we're looking at homeless people and we're like, well, if you just got a job, life would be better.
Yeah,
but it wouldn't.
Some people, some guys, they're just, and I've talked to some homeless guys. I used to work with a few guys in construction, and they worked in construction. They actually had jobs, but they lived in the tents, and they didn't have that bad a thing to say about it. A lot of them were like, well, I don't have to pay rent. I live out in the open air. I get a lot of sun, and I kind of enjoy my life. And at the time, I was like, that's insane. Where's your house? Where's your health care? But they were just like, I don't need it, man. But and like, all they need is a cell phone, and they got a job, and they can every cent of money they make, they can put in whatever they want. And in some cases, it's like, are we really wrong to say that an itinerant life, like me coming from a philosophical side, like a man called Diogenes was a philosopher in ancient Greece, and he just lived in a barrel on the streets and just made fun of everyone as they walked by, but he had an incredibly rich life. He didn't want it any other way. Alexander the Great came by, and anyone else would be like, please help me, give me money or something like that. But he looked at Alexander the Great and said, you're blocking the sun. Can you move? And I think that's just a great story, because we put this inherent value in living a life that conforms to the expectations of society, but maybe that's not necessarily the be all end all of it.
Yeah.
But not to detract anything from what is generally a terrible struggle that a lot of people go through. Homelessness is not something to romanticize, but also the life that we live is not something to romanticize either. You know?
I also wanted to go into, what do you know or what do you feel about hostile architecture?
Oh yeah, I know something about that. Like spikes under the bridges, benches that have the things that blocking it so people can't lay down.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another Band-Aid thing. I mean, it's another, because a lot of solutions to homeless that people try to put into place are often a way of kind of hiding the homeless. Like they think, let's move them away from the touristy areas so it doesn't look like we have a homeless problem.
Not my backyard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not my backyard, not in my central tourist area where all the money's coming in. So they're like, okay, you can't be here. Let's put you over somewhere else where no one's going to notice you.
But where are they putting them? That's the problem. So you say it's like a Band-Aid, as in you're putting a tiny solution on an issue. But I'm seeing it as, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, why are we treating other humans because they don't have jobs, they don't have money? Why are we treating them like they aren't worthy of laying on a bench?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make any sense to me that we as humans can look at another human and think they don't deserve a place to sit down. They don't deserve shade. They don't deserve basic human things that we allot dogs or something like that. Because they're a problem.
To them, they're like bugs.
But why are we as humans viewing other humans as the problem?
It's so easy to do that, man. You can give a few years and you can, I'm not going to bring up World War II, but you can bring up World War II. You can turn an entire population of people into bugs in people's eyes in a very short amount of time. And it's not hard.
I think that's the huge problem in the something that's greatly contributing to the epidemic is that humans are viewing other humans as less than.
Have you seen the hostile architecture in China?
I don't think I have.
In China, it's actually quite violent. They have like literal spikes. The idea of viewing people as a pest, as something to get rid of, and how the actual policies of states can become like treating people like a problem, like pests.
Yeah. And I don't know that it was specifically in China, but I did see where somewhere in the world, they had benches that when you sat on them for too long, they were like blowing out steam, like to burn someone. Like,
well, so many countries try and do things to hide their homeless, and some are more aggressive than others. Like even looking in a more, let's call it a more progressive society, Finland, which is known for its social welfare programs, for a high degree of happiness and satisfaction. They created a bunch of government-funded housing for the homeless, and therefore they effectively eliminated or massively decreased their homeless population. But basically what they did is they hid them in government-funded houses, which ended up being these people kind of, their lives didn't improve to a measurable degree, but they were hidden away. They were off the street, and therefore, it was it was no longer a problem from a public relations standpoint.
And it gives them they're allowed to say like, oh, we solved homelessness in our issue because they have a shelter over their head. So that must mean that all their issues are gone. Their mental health is cured. Their jobs, their money stability is cured. Like, oh, congratulations.
I mean, you looked at and that's the thing. The difficult thing is as you get into problems like this, as you get older and you see the very complex issues that faces in the world today, is that you really can't solve these things, especially not through one solution. And honestly, a lot of them cannot be solved at all because they're systemic. They're foundational to just statistical distributions. Certain things are always going to exist, but when they try and attack them politically, it's almost always through a public relations lens. It's always like, how can I get elected again? How can I look good to my constituents? And I can put a Band-Aid on this issue that's not actually going to do anything, and maybe it's only going to appear to do anything for a few years until the next election, and that is another issue with democracy and republicanism, that is just it creates temporary solutions that are really all about PR and don't solve any real problems.
It's so frustrating. Like,
it is.
It makes me so genuinely emotional that, because it doesn't even seem like the current government is trying to like show that they care about homelessness.
Yeah.
Like they're just straight up like, fuck them.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're going to pay attention to the rich people. We're going to pay attention to people that can benefit us and make us get reelected.
Constituents, lobbyists,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah.
So like they're not even trying to act like they care anymore.
Because fundamentally we don't in our core, our American values. Although there are some great values there, there's also a lack of compassion, a lack of respect for human dignity. You know, that's I appreciate more in Europe, even though there's issues, you know, with how they decide to run things and the efficiency of their programs. At least human dignity is a priority, and human health,
Yeah.
you know, which is not a priority here. It's all about making an extra buck. It's all about increasing value for shareholders every year. It is not about human health or dignity.
No. And not to like super dive into religion, but a lot of the people that are propping up the Orange Voldemort, like they're Christians. And I know you did that podcast with also He Who Should Not Be Named, but Christianity is so like everybody's a Christian these days. Like obviously you're an atheist, like whatever. But
A couple billion people, yeah.
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 But are we really at all showing, like to me, the definition of Christianity is someone who you look at them and you see Christ through them. Like you look at them and they're like, that person cares about the world. That person cares about others. And all of these people that are not all of them, but a lot of these people who are really loud about claiming to be Christians, especially when they can use that to stomp on someone else, are not showing Christ in them at all, because Christ cared about the less fortunate. Like if we were acting as Christians, as a society, as a whole, I genuinely believe homelessness would be probably not even an issue, because we wouldn't be viewing people as bugs. We would be viewing people as equals.
Yeah.
And that's all I really want to touch on religion. But like,
No, I mean, it's a salient point. I mean, I think if you're going to profess to be a Christian, you should actually perform the values that you espouse, and otherwise it's literally just performative. I mean, it's
Exactly.
it's an idea. It's an identity. You identify as a Christian, sure, but are you doing things that Christians foundationally espouse? Maybe not. You know.
Yeah, and they used it as a way to make themselves feel superior and dominant over other people. So that's not what Christ was for at all.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, although I do think that there are a lot of great charities, you know, created by Christians, a lot of money and effort goes around the world, you know, to helping the less fortunate, and that is a good thing, and we should definitely promote that. But you know, there are many Christians, although everyone's a hypocrite in some sense. And of course, people are going to apply that to their religion as well. I mean, and you can't really, I think that if you are religious, and this may just be my atheist perspective, but I don't think that it's really possible to reconcile every single religious idea at once, especially if you're trying to read the Old Testament. That's a book of laws.
You're all
that's
over the place.
2,500 years old. And so you really can't apply every single Old Testament law to new life. But if you want to be a Christian, you should be looking at the teachings of Jesus and what it really means.
Yeah.
And even if it goes against your best interests, you know, in terms
100.
of advancing yourself, maybe you should think about the principles that Christ espoused. And if you want to call yourself a Christian, put that into the world.
Yeah, like even if you're like, I definitely don't believe everything. I believe that the Bible is made up of stories that are meant to teach lessons about being like Christ.
Yeah.
I don't, myself personally, don't necessarily believe that this story particularly happened in history or anything like that. But I believe that the stories that were told were meant to teach you something.
Yeah.
And if we're not using those teachings to better humanity, what the fuck is the point?
Well, most often they use the stories with their own interpretation to justify the actions they're already taking in life, you know, and justify their you know, maybe subtly unfounded beliefs, you know. I mean, because it's so easy to interpret those things. I mean, just like the Constitution, you can interpret it many different ways, you know, and so you can obviously interpret a religious text that's been translated, you know, hundreds of times, you know, in whatever way you choose to endorse whatever beliefs you feel like, you know, but in a lot of, it's distorted heavily, you know, in many people's lives, you know.
Yeah.
So, Krissy, what's our next topic?
Uh, oh, I think I wanted, so when you were on your podcast with Lucas, and he's super young and he did a great job, but you guys touched on teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been a teacher. I went to school to be a teacher. I'm currently not teaching, but the perception that you guys had was so far away from what I feel like is reality. Like, you guys talked about how teachers don't really care about what's going on in the classroom or what they're teaching, and teachers don't care about the individual student and how they're learning, and you have it so backwards. Okay.
Right. Well, to start with, for one, I was talking to a 12-year-old, so I wasn't gonna be
I know.
like, "Excuse me, Lucas, did you know that the teaching crisis is actually concomitants upon the gross misappropriation of federal funds and a lack of interest in public schooling?" I was gonna be like, "Did you even understand this, child?"
I know. Well, it inspired me enough to come on the podcast.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it.
But teaching is so dictated now. Like, we are put into a classroom. First of all, you don't even have to have a degree in teaching or education to be a teacher.
Yeah.
You literally just have to have any degree. And then you can be a teacher now. And maybe not like a higher level teacher, but like as far as just getting in there, anything.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with that, especially as an engineer without a bachelor engineer degree. I feel like if you have an equivalence level of experience and knowledge, I don't think a degree is necessarily a be-all, end-all of one's experience and value in the workplace.
I disagree when it comes to teaching.
Okay.
So in college, like, I had to go through diversity for educators that taught about all the things you're going to experience in your classroom and how you're going to work through them and make it better for all of your students. I also went through technology that's specifically for educators, because not everybody just knows how to use a smart board or a smart table or anything like that that is used to help facilitate education with
But
kids.
is it impossible for them to learn this either in the classroom through continued learning, self-improvement, or on their own through online classes? I mean, why does it have to be coming from an institution like a college or something like that in order for them to get the qualifications necessary to teach?
So I don't think that they need, you're right. I don't think that they need specifically to go to college to get these things, but these aren't things that you just know how to do.
Oh, yeah, with no
So-
education, I mean, I think that an educator should be educated. I think.
But
sure.
like if you're going and getting your business degree or something, like, you're not being taught these things. You're not being taught about the diversity of your children. You're not being taught about how to use specific teacher tools or how to make a lesson plan or do a
so
grade
you think
book.
it should be more difficult to become a teacher, though, as well as the fact that teachers are underpaid? So how are we going to reconcile these two things? It's more expensive to become a teacher in order to have tighter restrictions on how educated teachers
I
can be.
believe in free public education. So
Well, how are we going to do that, though? That's very
we're
expensive.
not, because, well, that goes back to the whole like redistribution of money and everything. But I think you should be able to get a higher education without it putting you $100,000 in debt. But I definitely think that you should have not only some kind of specific education on teaching to be a teacher, but I also think you need to have some like intern classroom experience in order to be a teacher. But if you're a fresh out of college 21-year-old and you went to school for mechanic, I don't know, and then you are put into a classroom and now you have these 30 students who are all individually different and have different learning styles and all of that, and you in no way, even if you want to, could provide what they need.
Well, I mean, for one, I would hope that they more kind of err in the line of language arts, history, those kind of, or mathematics, those kind of degrees, as opposed to literal mechanics. I think there would probably be some selection in terms of people who have had education around something that is related to the concept of teaching or scholastics. But I think, okay, so the issue is if we're increasing the barriers to entry of teaching, then we also have to acknowledge the fact that that's going to increase the demand for teacher pay,
Which
and there
should
has to
be
be
much
funds for
higher
this. It should be
anyways.
higher, but also you can't have higher teacher pay while making it a public good, because that's going to lower the value and lower the ability to pay teachers at that higher level, because there won't be as much money in it.
But there should be more than enough money in education in the schools. Like, for instance, the lottery is supposed to be putting, I think it's something like 27% into education. I very seriously doubt anywhere near that is going, because
Yeah, probably not.
you can't have a doctor, you can't have an engineer, you can't have literally anything without a teacher. So teachers honestly should be one of the highest paid people in the world. I may be a bit biased in that, but like they are the ones who fundamentally teach you so much.
But you know why there's no interest in it? Because it's very difficult to profit off of it. Whereas other industries like healthcare is extremely profitable in the United States. And that's why it's good for some people, like nurses, extremely highly paid in the United States. Versus Europe, nurses make like twice, 3 times more than nurses make in Europe. But it's because it's a for-profit industry that is incredibly profitable. But education is very difficult to monetize, so there's just not much interest in it. And so therefore the wages are low and the funding is just not going where it should be.
But the profit should be the children that are getting
absolutely
educated and are becoming well-rounded and good people because they're being properly educated.
That's an investment in the future of the country. But that's difficult because it's such a long-term goal, and especially in the capitalist system we're in, we prioritize short-term gains. And if you have an investment that is not going to realize profits in 20 years, it is tough to put money into it. And so what we get is in a criminally underfunded education system, because it's really hard to profit off it in the short term, even though in the future it is by far the most profitable industry, but it's not seen as that in the short term. And therefore we have a difficulty in it because it's not being prioritized the way it should.
Yeah.
And so I'm absolutely cognizant of that. But, but at the same time, like I said, my education was not good, but it was public school. My teachers did not know much and they didn't care much, but I understand there's externalities to why. I mean, it is not their fault at all. I mean, there's some shitty teachers. I mean, it's always going to be somebody, but you're not cognizant of that at a young age, and you see the initial effects of it. What I wanted to get out of Lucas was really his perspective on, are they really helping me to get where I need to be? I mean, are they recognizing my weaknesses? And obviously there's reasons why they aren't, but I want to get his perspective. Just like, because no one ever really, I don't know, maybe they are, but I don't ever get from kids like what it's like, to grow up and to see the externalities of this lack of funding and this lack of care to the individual child and how it's affecting him.
And that is something. So a lot of the reason there's a teacher shortage beyond the insane wage disparity, like it's because they are wanting us to make government robots.
Oh yeah.
We are not allowed to, in the classroom, have the freedom to teach what we want or what they should be learning.
Curriculum.
It is exactly word for word what you need to be teaching. If you're not teaching this, and then God forbid, there's so much fucking power with the parents that, oh, now you're paying attention to what your kid is doing in my class? Because before that, you didn't give a crap. But now that you have so much control, now you can be like, I don't want my kid to learn about racism or slavery, because of course if they don't learn about it, that means it didn't happen. So we are being forced to now make these government robots instead of being able to be like, okay, well, Alice, she really needs to be taught visually because that's how she learns, but Sarah needs to be taught this way because this is, we aren't giving the time, the resources, anything to be able to facilitate the individual education. But then on top of that, even if we did have the time and resources, we're not allowed to.
Yeah.
We're just not.
I think it comes down to where, what I said earlier is that it's difficult to profit in education. It isn't, but where education is profited is in the universities and the state-funded university systems. I remember reading that USF, with the federal grants that it gets, could completely cover all of the costs of tuition for every student with the totality of the grants they get, but they continue to charge tuition to every student on the tune of thousands of dollars a year, tens of thousands of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And so that's entirely profit-based from them. And so there's an extreme amount of money in universities, and therefore the curriculum seems to be designed to funnel people into universities. And that's been the way it was since I was a kid. The prevailing message was, if you do not go to a university, you are going to be flipping burgers at McDonald's until the day you die. And that is an extreme distortion of the truth, and so no one went into trade schools. No one became plumbers and electricians. And so we have a lack of people in those skills. Meanwhile, those people are making six figures in a couple of years out of a simple trade school, a few months. And so we devalued those jobs because they weren't feeding into the college system.
And now we have now we're 30 years old. We've went through college. We have $100,000 in debt. We're living paycheck to paycheck. And now in order to do more in our life, we now have to go back to school, go back to learn trades so that we can do more with our life.
Catch up again.
Yeah.
And we don't know how to deal with money too, or anything about the functions of society. We were not taught how to do taxes. We're not taught how credit cards work. And so we fall into these traps. And so I feel like that was designed to funnel us into a place where we don't understand the world around us to avoid being taken advantage of.
They wanted us to be ignorant so we couldn't disagree with them.
It disgusts me so much, Krissy, man.
It really does.
And we've fallen into this system. And so in some ways, it's so hard to recover from that. It takes decades to. I feel like we're still growing up at age 30 because we were just not given the tools we needed to survive in the system, because we weren't supposed to. We were supposed to just fucking tread water with our head just above the level and not drown, but never ever succeed. We were not given the tools to.
Yeah.
And that's why... Sorry, continue.
No, because we have full-blown jobs, degrees, everything, and I'm still looking for the adult in the room in a lot of situations. I'm like, this isn't for me, right? Like, where's the person who's actually going to deal with this?
Yeah, like we've seen, and a lot of people are saying this at all walks of life, is that what did Bo Burnham say in the song? But I'm turning 30 is like, when my dad was 28, he went to war, and then I'm 28 and I just built a birdhouse with my mom. Oh fuck. It's like, we're seeing this kind of, not regression, but like this delay in the aging process. And it's because they're not raising people to be adults. They're raising people to be slaves of the system, and
100%.
Yeah. And so naturally we're coming out of this feeling like we aren't old enough, and therefore less of us are having kids. The birth rate is dropping because, for one, it's too expensive to have kids, but also we're not mentally equipped to, because we're still kids ourselves.
I can't even... I've been taking care of kids since I was 17, 18 years old. I always knew that my life was going to be making children into good people. That's been my whole life goal. And I feel like through schooling, through experience, through just everything, I genuinely feel like I would be a good mom. I have no interest in being a mom. One, because I've always raised other people's children.
You've been raising kids to be good people your whole life, but you're not sure if you want to have kids yourself.
No, I'm sure. I'm sure I don't want to have kids, because even though I really genuinely believe I would be a good mom and I would raise a good adult, that's a problem. Everybody is picturing the fact that they're raising kids. You're not raising kids. You're raising a future adult.
Yeah.
The things that you instill in them now, whether it's racism, hatred, or love and kindness, all of those things are going to be them when they grow up. So I know I'd be a great mom, but I have no interest in it. One, financially, how the hell am I going to take care of a kid when I'm stressed out about buying my cat's inhaler? But then also being responsible for putting another human into this world when it is royally messed up right now feels kind of irresponsible.
I get that argument. I disagree with that second point. Obviously it's your personal choice when you want to have kids. That's entirely up to you. But the point of we're living in hard times, why have kids?
Yeah.
But it's like we're still living in some of the best times in all of human history, right? Things are not that terrible in the grand scheme of things. Like there were times for 100 years when there was nothing but plague and death and war and famine, and people still had kids. And if they didn't, then the entire human race would just stop.
I mean, that's a good point.
No matter what is going on in the world, we need to have kids because this is our species. And if we don't, and also if you are a good person, if you try to be a good person, then your children can be a reflection and an aggrandizement of that.
Yeah.
You can make them to be so much better than you could ever be yourself. And but it's your choice in the end. But I think that saying because of the world we live in today, things are always going to be bad.
Yeah,
you're never going to be ready either. But it's worth it to create something greater than yourself and give all your love into that. I don't know. That's how I feel. But
well, dang, Ben.
I don't know, man.
Trying to make me have kids?
Sorry.
No, like I just
Zach.
feel that I feel that personally, like I do agree that I have the ability to hopefully make this beautiful human that I know I could raise into being kind and loving, but I'm just going to take that part of me and spread it into like lots of little humans and hope that I can make lots of little differences.
No, and that has tremendous value too, I mean, if at the end of your life you've made the world slightly better than when you entered it, I mean, that's the mark of a life well lived.
That's the goal.
I just got to do better than my parents did, I just got to be...
I mean, my mom did a great job. My dad... But
I'm in the same situation. My dad always said, he said, son, I want to be a good, bad example. I want you to do everything I didn't do.
I think he did a good job.
Well, thank you. Well, we're starting. I'm still
he
getting going.
did a good job of being a bad job.
Hey, Charlie Markham, good job. You did it, bro. Yeah, but I want to have kids. I'm very scared as well. I mean, because again, I feel like a child. I think it's really weird when people call me sir and things like that. I'm not ready for it, but you're never gonna be ready for it. And to me, I feel like it's the ultimate goal of all of our existence, and I feel like there's going to be nothing more profound and beautiful than when that finally happens. And it's this tremendous responsibility and a consummation of everything that we've ever led to and as a species. And I'd like to take part in that, and to be able to mold someone and watch someone grow and change and evolve and become better than you could ever be. I think it's a beautiful thing. And
I'm looking forward to loving your kids.
Hell yeah.
And Emma and Jordan and everybody else's kids.
I need you to take them on the weekends sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Until they're like 2 to like 4, because like fuck them at that age.
Wow. This is my kid, bro.
They suck.
Tell it to their face, huh?
I will.
We're going to watch these looking back and be like, what the fuck, Aunt Krissy?
Like I currently have a 4, almost 5, 6, almost 8, 9, and 12-year-old nephews and nieces. And I love them so, so much. But also, fuck those kids. Like, sometimes they just suck. And that's just...
Yeah, you gotta be honest about that. People are just like, I love my kids so much.
No.
They're so perfect. It's like, no, they suck sometimes, bro.
Yeah.
And you can't just lie.
If you think your kid's perfect all the time, no.
Yeah, you're leaving something out. You're leaving out some important details.
Yeah.
All right, Krissy. Wait 1 second. I need a refill.
Okay.
We'll witness the magically refilling glass.
In the glass that has barely emptied because Ben made a very strong margarita.
Listen, you said you were nervous, all right? I was trying to help you out, bro.
I wanted to be relaxed, not blacked out.
What do you think we're trying to do here, bro? All right. So, what's our next topic, Krissy?
Mental health.
Yeah.
So, I struggle a lot with my mental health. I have a lot of trauma, as most people do. Thanks, Dad.
Shout out.
But, my dad's name is also Charles.
What is it with these damn Charles, man?
Fuck them.
Fuck Charles, man.
So I have a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that happened in my childhood that I didn't work through. So it caused a lot of like behavior issues and like imbalances in my brain. And I tried to go to therapy several times when I was younger and it sucked. It literally was the worst. And so I like had given up on it. I tried again when I was like 23, and I thought I was getting something out of it, but then my therapist was like really flaky. Anyways, mental health is a huge issue
Yeah.
in the world, but
Yeah.
especially in America.
Hmm.
And it is very stigmatized. And like people, honest, kind of not at the same level, but honestly, like homelessness, it's seen if you have these mental illnesses that you are less of a person.
Yeah.
And like that's clearly an issue.
Yeah, and it is very widespread. I mean, I think that most people have some form of mental issue. I
Absolutely.
mean, there's obviously a huge spectrum of that. And most people can find a way to be functional in their lives. While having that. But I am also concerned with the methods we take to approach it. I do think that there has been an over prescription of some medications to a lot of people. For the purpose of profit.
Yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily helping people, and I don't think that it's always a matter of a chemical imbalance. The chemical imbalance theory, was really heavily believed over the course of the late 20th century, but there's been some pushback against it. That it's really not just a matter of fixing the serotonin reuptake issue. I mean, it's just you can't necessarily cure depression through science and through chemistry.
So yes, I believe that there is a overprescription issue, that it is a band-aid that definitely can help, but doesn't help unless there's also a combination of therapy and like
Mm.
learning coping methods and stuff like that. I do believe that people have brain imbalance. I do believe that I have a brain imbalance. But like okay, so just me personally. So I started taking Lexapro,
Mm.
and then I was just seeing like one time like visit psychiatrist online. Like it was not good. And so then one of them, I was taking Lexapro, and then for my anxiety and depression, and then they had me taking Wellbutrin, which is like serotonin, like it increases your serotonin.
Well, that's what Lexapro does,
Yeah,
also.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and they had me taking it at night, and then I couldn't sleep. And that's because it's basically an upper.
Yeah.
So, then because I couldn't sleep, they prescribed me Seroquel. And yeah,
Yeah.
and then they diagnosed me with rapid switching bipolar. And that is what I genuinely have thought that I had over the last year.
Wait, they diagnosed you with that after they started giving you the medications?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the person who gave me the medication and the person who diagnosed me were different people.
Yeah. But they knew
So
about the medications you were taking because you
yeah,
listed that as your current medications.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it should have been
And a
like
combination of medications that doubled the same effect.
exactly.
And then they give you, this is crazy. It's like when they first started prescribing these pills, like in the early 1900s, they would give people uppers, and then they would be like, "Oh, I can't sleep," and they're like, "All right, well, here's some Quaaludes," and they give them downers,
Exactly.
and they just be constant a cycle of pills, 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 pills,
Exactly.
and then not getting to the root of like, we're just trying to solve this problem that we created. And we're fucking with people's brain chemistry and their
It's
bodies too, because these things have physical effects in your body. The
absolutely.
side effects can be terrible, man.
Okay, so that is what happened. I was on Lexapro, then they prescribed the Wellbutrin, which is an upper, and then I'm two up. Not like I'm not depressed and like happy.
Yeah.
I'm just too physically
Hyper.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they gave me Seroquel, which is supposed to bring you down,
Yeah.
diagnosed me with bipolar, and so that's what I thought I had. Well, I just started going to a new psychiatrist, new therapist after like so I'm going to my regular primary care, and I'm like I'm still having this issue. I'm still like not like
Yeah.
wanting to like be existing and stuff, and she's like, okay, well, let me increase this medicine.
Mhm.
She's not a psychiatrist, but she doubled one of the
What, your primary
Wellbutrin.
care doctor?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the Wellbutrin, and she's a great doctor, but so then I went and saw a new psychiatrist, and a therapist. And this is genuinely the first time I feel like anyone has ever listened and genuinely cared about my mental health as far as like a doctor. So I'm talking to this psychiatrist and she's like, "What? Like, why would they prescribe you this and then because you're having a side effect from this, they prescribed you this to counter it?" And so I stopped taking it entirely 3 days ago.
Yeah.
So my body is starting to withdraw from it. So I was actually worried about doing the podcast because like I just feel like shitty and
Yeah,
I've like
right.
my intrusive thoughts are like really rampant and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well, outwardly you seem fine, so
thanks. I'm really good at hiding it. I definitely think the overprescribing and everything is an issue, but like when you genuinely get someone who cares, like she's like, "Okay, I'm going to take you off of this because you never should have been on it."
Yeah.
And oh, and then she's like, "Yeah, you're not bipolar." Like they were treating you like you were bipolar because of the way you were acting
Right.
on the medicines they gave you.
Because they were enhancing, the upper and lower portions of your mentality through medication.
What a concept. Yeah.
No,
So
I felt through the same. I have an autoimmune disease, and so in the last year, I was going through a lot of doctors and a lot of medications to try and figure it out and try and heal it. And I went through a point where I was on so many different drugs and so many different pills, and it got to a point where I was trying to heal the symptoms that one was causing the other thing, and nothing was really helping. And I almost got crippled by it. It was horrible, and it was one of the worst times of my life, because I was allowing doctors to kind of experiment on me.
exactly.
And they don't honestly really care. They're looking for
They're
data
getting paid.
points. They're getting paid, and especially the more pills they prescribe. And they're looking for data points for like, okay, well, you're about 3% less on this factor. Okay, well, let's bump up the dose in this. Let's try this drug to combat this. And they will prescribe drugs all day because it benefits them to do so, but they never want to look at the root causes of things, and they especially never want to look beyond their own specialty. It's very difficult to find any doctor who really cares about you.
Like a whole body.
Like I saw 24 doctors last year, and there's maybe 2 that I have any respect for after all that. You know, it is so rare to find a doctor that cares about you. You got to hold on to those doctors. When you find them.
I kind of did the same thing. Like I didn't have health insurance for like 10 years because, like America. And so when I got health insurance, I was like, okay, let's do all of the issues at once. So I saw like a dermatologist for a skin condition, and thank God, like I went and got a mammogram, found out I had a tumor. Like I would have never known these things.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like, okay, well now you have this.
Yeah.
But like I could have had those for years and didn't know because of no health insurance.
Yeah, no, it's an unfortunate thing. And your health insurance is tied to your job for most people, unless you want to spend a massive amount of money. And then what money do you have to pay for it if you don't have a job? And so it's another barrier to entry to basic just human life. If you aren't working, then you really are not dealing with your health.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of money in the healthcare system, and in some ways that's led to some good. There's a lot of money in research. American research is kind of at the forefront of the world in terms of developing new medications, cancer medications, and new treatments, and that's great. But for the average person, there's a huge barrier to entry, and the quality of care is really terrible. And I've spent a lot of time in the medical industry in the last few years, being a person with a chronic disease. And the experience has been less than great, even though we have what's supposed to be like the greatest medical care in the world. But the quality of per person is middling to almost the lowest in the developed world, despite all the money and research that goes into it. And so what is the cause for that? It's just there's huge barriers to entry, high costs, and the doctors only care about profit. And it's really ugly when your pain and your life is dependent on a person who is not interested in really helping you and is just interested in making a buck off you.
Yeah, that was what was so like, I mean, it feels life-changing to have this psychiatrist look at me and be like, I'm so happy that we found each other.
Yeah.
Because like, well, first of all, I don't pay anything for therapy right now because of my insurance.
That's nice.
So that's nice and makes it accessible. But also, like, the fact that she is putting time and effort and thought into, like, remembering everything I'm going through to try to help me get where I need to be. She says that instead of bipolar, I actually have OCD, which makes
Yeah.
sense, and PTSD. Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
So,
Shout out, Dad. I personally, although as a principal, I do recommend people go to therapy. I have never personally had a good experience with it, and I've had 3 therapists technically, but every time they tried to kind of railroad me into the style of therapy that fits them the best and were extremely resistant to me asking them to tailor the sessions towards something that works for me, which I understand from a professional level that that's their style, that's what they've learned, and you kind of learn a certain set of tools, and maybe you're not equipped to do someone's different style, but it's like I feel like what you should be learned and equipped to do is to understand a person's psyche and work within that psyche because every person's different. Every time I end up stopping after a few sessions because they're not at all interested in approaching things the way I feel like I need to as a person. Like my last therapy session I did 6 sessions with a guy, and he was very interested in data, and so he would spend almost half of our sessions just showing me this laptop and showing me the results of these multiple choice questions he had me do before the sessions. And you say, okay, you had about a 5% different response to this same question that we asked you 2 weeks ago. Interesting. And he's like, oh, wow, you scored about 10% higher in this one. And
how is that helpful at all?
It was helpful for him, I guess, in his particular autism, but for my autism, it wasn't really working. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to talk about my past and my childhood and the things that led me to having the neuroses that I have today, because obviously those are sourced in my childhood. I had a mixed experience in childhood, and I wanted to kind of get in that. And he said, I don't really think that's productive, but if you really want, we can do 1 session about it next week, but then I don't really want to talk about it again. And so I said, okay, thanks for everything. And I left because I was like, okay, you're kind of giving this platitude, like, okay, we'll talk about it once with your stupid fucking childhood,
God.
And it's just like, what? Who's therapy and who, man? I mean, and so, but it's been difficult for me to shop around and look for therapists because the process is kind of weird with your insurance company. And with mine, and I don't know if you've had the experience, is that whenever you say that you want to look for therapy, they want you to start answering these questions. Like this guy would call me up every week or 2 or something like that, and he would ask me like if I had plans to harm myself or others, and it made me feel like there's this weird attachment to wanting to approach therapy and suicidal depression. And they were just like, if you're trying to seek therapy, you must be trying to harm yourself or others, and we have to like ensure like some kind of safety thing to make sure you don't. And I just felt really weird about that because I have no interest in, but at the same time, I have some deficiencies in my mind that I want to address, especially because I'm trying to be a father soon. I don't want to carry those into his life, her life, whoever it happens to be, because I feel like it's something that's left over from childhood that I want to just rid myself of. And it's not that easy. You can't just turn it off. You can't fix it like you're a fucking car or something, like a mechanic. But I want to find the tools to deal with those things.
Yeah.
And you should be able to approach that without having to be someone who's like, quote unquote, fucked in the head or something.
Yeah.
And they treat everyone who's approaching therapy as if they're fucked in the head.
Absolutely. So my experience, like, I've gone to a bunch too. The one I went to in college, I went in and she was really aggressive. Like, she was like the questions about suicide and stuff like that, which, are you allowed to say that?
It's pretty late in the episode.
Okay,
no one gives a shit.
okay,
You're
cool.
good.
So, she was like, so are you sure you're not wanting to kill yourself? Like all these things like that. And being like, it was what she wanted.
Yeah.
Like she like needed me to be able to say yes to this to be able to help me. I ended up leaving. I never talked to her again. Yeah. And then the next one I went to was like holistic. So she didn't believe in medicine. She was very like, meditation will cure everything. So obviously, I'm not very good at meditating. Like, I'm in my head too much. So that didn't work for me. And then I saw another one who I went to her house. I didn't know that. I went to her house, and when she was talking to me, she'd be like, okay, close your eyes. And then she's talking to me. And when somebody tells you to close your eyes, it's hard to keep them closed, right? When somebody tells me to close my eyes, I'm like,
I never had that problem. I feel like I can just be like, all right, now they're closed.
well, I also have this stranger in front of me telling me to
I guess
close
if you're
my
in
eyes.
a stranger's house,
Yeah.
then it's kind of weird because you're like, what's he going to do next,
Yeah, but I vividly remember I closed my eyes and I'm like trying to look, and she yelled at me, close your eyes.
Oh my
and I was
God,
like,
man.
got to get out of here.
Yeah.
So experiences I had were just really bad.
Yeah.
But when I came to this one, so I saw the psychiatrist first, and she just gave me this sense of comfort. Like, she didn't seem like she had any plan at all. She just wanted to hear what I was feeling, what has happened to me, and then going forward. And I feel so heard and like cared for. And it is such a different experience. And you're completely right. It is so hard to find a good therapist that fits you that it causes more trauma.
No, my
Like,
God.
to try to
You gotta
find
shop
one.
around. My
Yeah.
first experience with therapy when I was in high school, I got Baker acted.
Me too.
And yeah, nice.
How
Was
old were
it,
you?
16.
Me too.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Hey, man, I guess that's the year to do it, But so I had been a little depressed at the time. A lot of it's just being a teenager, and I was depressed over a girl. It was bad. And but some people played a prank on me, and they told some story. And the story was enough to get the school resource officer to like take me into like the school like psych guide and like talk to me. And at the time, I didn't realize where it was going to end up because he was like asking me like, "Are you depressed?" And I was like, Yeah, I really am. When I was kind of honest with him, and I felt like someone I could be honest with. So I told him some feelings I'd had recently, and some really dark thoughts I'd had and stuff like that. And I thought I could just trust this person because it seemed like I could trust him, and I was naive and young, and I was like, I really had been having some, but not suicidal, but dark. But then immediately hit the fucking button, and the cop took me in, and they started doing tests on me because they thought I was on drugs because I was very nervous in the situation. And as you know, I talk a little fast, and I can be disjointed sometimes. I was doing this to a exponential extent because I was nervous and I was young. I didn't know what was going on, so they thought I was on some kind of speedball or something. And so they did a bunch of tests on me. They found I was on no drugs, and they were like, all right, let's just send him up to whatever the psych ward is they have in the hospital, And
Did they instantly drug you?
They tried to.
Yeah.
I refused. But they started giving me medication. I didn't know what it was. I can't even remember what they were trying to give me, but they tried to give me medications. They didn't like try to force it down my throat or something, but they gave me pills, and I was just like, I just don't want to take them. And they were just like, well, you gotta take them. Well, I'm not interested. They get a little cup kind of thing, and I would just kind of put it in my pocket or something. What I remember is, for one, I couldn't sleep because every 15 minutes, some guy would come in and make sure you hadn't like hanged yourself, and he would like bang this thing on the wall to like a thing. Well, it was like a sensor thing, and he would press the button, and that would be like the guarantee, like, okay, he's fine, right? But he would make this.
Did you have your own room?
No, I was with another kid.
Oh, okay.
And I was still a juvenile, so I wasn't in like the adult ward, but I was with the kids. But there were still, some of these guys were, they weren't like crazy, but they were kind of disturbed. And I felt like I didn't belong there.
I had a room with 5 other girls.
5 people?
Yeah.
Jesus, I was just with one other guy, man.
That's why I couldn't sleep, because our beds are like 4 foot apart and like super duper tiny and rock hard mattress.
It's uncomfortable, man.
Yeah.
Like I always said afterwards, like the first time I wanted to kill myself was when they fucking put me in this place for telling me I want to kill myself, which I never ever said or wanted to do. But then I would talk to they had a psychiatrist there, and you were supposed to talk to him every few hours or something. And because I was there for 72 hours, that's as long as they can hold you.
Yeah.
Right. And every time I would talk to them, I would say, hey, this is a mistake. I mean, yeah, I'm a little sad, but I'm a teenager, but I never wanted to hurt myself. This is crazy. I just want to get out here. And he said, every time he would tell me, I just think you're telling me what I want to hear.
Yep.
And so I just think you need some more time. And I was like, dude, my parents are here. They're trying to take me home. I feel fine. This is costing thousands of dollars, and they're going to fucking hold this over my head for years.
Oh, my God.
And ended up costing $12,000, which is actually pretty light compared to what medical bills are these days.
I don't know what mine cost.
Yeah, you didn't pay it. I mean, yeah, we didn't pay it either. Honestly, no, and fuck that shit, man. After a few years, it goes off your record. Sorry guys, you're getting plenty of money. You ain't gonna get it out of me, man. But yeah, so that put me off of therapy for many, many years. I thought it was utter bullshit because I had put my trust in a person, and they completely defied it. And so I was afraid ever since that moment is that if I even begin to talk about the dark thoughts in my head, which are for a long time were predominance, and I had a hard time, especially before I met Megan. It was a rough time, and so I was afraid that they would just hit that button and and send me into the fucking psych ward just because I suggested that I was a little sad. And I think that's brutal because you should be able to talk about these things. Many people feel dark thoughts, and if they feel like they can't talk about it because they're afraid someone's going to hit a button and that's going to charge them $20,000 and put them into medical observation, I understand the need to protect people in the case they might harm themselves, but there needs to be some allowances there. Yeah. So that people can talk about the dark thoughts they're having without feeling afraid to say that word.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so. I've definitely had thoughts. Oh, I've had thoughts, but so when I'm talking to my therapist or psychiatrist or whatever, they'll be like they know what I'm feeling. So mine are a little different. Like I don't really plan to but I frequently feel like I don't want to exist. Yeah. Like I feel like life would be easier if I didn't exist, which is a hard thing to say out loud in front of people. My therapist. So they know that this is like a thought, an intrusive thought that I have had. They'll ask me like, okay, do you have a plan? Like, or do you actively have a plan? No? Okay. Then they move on from it. Yeah. Like it's not the sole focus. Like, yeah, they have to make sure I'm safe, but then they move on from it, which I think is an important thing to do. You should be able to tell them that you've had those thoughts without being immediately, because like that was another reason why I did not go back to one particular therapist, because he told me, because I asked him, I said, listen, I'm a complicated person. I have some dark feelings I'd like to be able to talk about with you. And he said, well, it's my responsibility to report immediately any conversations that might lead to harm for yourself. And I'm like, I just don't think that's conducive to a good conversation. Yeah, I don't know what you can do for me, really. I mean, if you're actively saying, hey, I have made a note, I've said my goodbyes, I am actively planning to kill myself, then yeah, they have to report that. Yeah. But as far as you being like, I've had these thoughts, like sometimes my brain tells me that I should just crash my car. Yeah. And just turned into oncoming traffic. Yeah. And they'll be like, okay, well, do you have an active... That should be your next question as a therapist. Mm-hmm. Do you have an active plan? No? Okay, then it's just an intrusive thought. Because people will be very deliberate when they want to. People will do it. They will try it multiple times. They will create a plan, right? And there will be a methodology to it because they are determined to end their life. Yeah. And it's tough, especially because they're probably not going to talk to their therapist about it if they really want to do it. Because if people are really serious about it, they're not looking for attention. They don't want someone to talk them out of it. Yeah. They'll just do it. You know, and so that's a sad thing. It's a personal kind of process they're going through. And I think if you're willing to talk about it with a therapist, that indicates you're not looking to end your life. You're not looking for help. Yeah, exactly. And so that is a cry out for help. They should be answered not with suspicion and incarceration and medication. It should be answered with understanding. But it's sometimes not, man. A lot of the times it's not, unfortunately. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I'll give you the details of the one that I am using. And also they give you, like, a preference. Like, they ask you, like, would you feel more comfortable with someone older or younger? Yeah. Would you feel more comfortable with a man or a woman? Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't matter to you, that's one thing. But for me, it does. Yeah. I told them, like, I want a female because I feel more comfortable opening up, and I want someone who's on the younger side because I don't want, like, in my day, like, that kind of, like, mind frame. And I need someone who believes that medicine can be helpful but isn't the end all. Yeah. And telling them this thing, they made me a perfect match. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, that's good. That's good. I'll take a look at it if you give me the option, because I'm done with mine. I stopped seeing him last week. This is pointless. Oh, wow, that was recent. Yeah, I just did it. Yeah, wow. I did 6 weeks with him, and he just had no interest in...
It seemed like he didn't care about me. He had so little interest that after 6 sessions, he didn't know what I did for work. He didn't know what my job was. Which, I don't know, that seems like a random thing, but it's like, if you don't know the person you're doing therapy of, then like, what exactly, how can you help them?
Yeah. And were you paying for it?
Yeah, of
out
course.
of pocket?
Well, no, I had insurance, so it was $45 a session or something, but which is better than $150 at my last place. But it's still a lot if you don't feel like you're getting anything out of it, and if you feel like, it almost felt like a pyramid scheme, because every time it's like, okay, we'll get to the therapy next week. I'm like, well, what am I getting out of this?
Yeah.
And so, and that's why I'm not really sure, because I chose a man this time, because I want to go the last, well, okay, the first guy was a guy, but he was the guy who said that he was going to report me or something. Then the second one I went to was a lady. And we had some good conversations, but she was kind of getting, for one, it was $150 a week. And I can't do that shit.
I've been there, yeah.
Yeah, but she was also kind of vindictive. Not vindictive, but she almost seemed like she was judging me in a almost like a kind of like, you shouldn't do that. What is wrong with you kind of thing? And I was just kind of like, whoa, all right. I thought we were just supposed to have a conversation here.
Yeah.
But then I got this guy, and it's like he doesn't care about me at all. It's just another data thing. And so I don't know if I really prefer a male or a female therapist. I just feel like I need to find the right person who understands what I'm there for.
Yeah. Definitely.
But anyways, it's an issue. Mental health is a big issue in this country. I think that it's a huge component of a lot of the violence we've seen recently. And I think it's something that we need to address beyond just surface level ways of approaching that continued problem. I mean, it's something that people don't want to address. It's a very key issue. But I think that medication is one component of it, but we should really not be ignoring every other component that leads to a healthy human mind, Yeah. But anyways, Krissy.
I think it's been a great talk.
It has.
There is a couple of things I need to say to the camera.
All right.
I need you guys to seek out therapy, to be good to your teachers, to pay teachers more, and to be a kind human.
Hell yeah, Krissy.
Yeah.
Thank you for having a great conversation with me. It was an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.